Glad you're with us on Wealth by Design. Brad Johansson, Tom Elder, president of Retirement Wealth Design. How are you, my friend?
I am fantastic. Today is a beautiful day right now.
And man, if we wake up and we get to go and we get to do what we want to do, and that's what we're trying to do for you, is get you to do what you want to do, is that finish that retirement in the way that you want to do it. We're moving into this generation. I'm a boomer, Tom.
You should be proud of that.
Us boomers are getting old and moving all of this. When we talk about a great wealth transfer, I mean, this is next generation, born between 46 and 60. That's a massive one. I'm at the tail end of this boomer generation and born in 62. And you get to this spot where you go, okay, what are we going to do with it? Well, the ridiculous notion now, so we're probably at, what's the number? $90 trillion. That's going to move from my generation. Shoot, I'm not even sure. It's past you, because the next generation is before you, you young whippersnapper. You just turned 21.
Hey, you don't look a day over 30 in my eyes.
What's significant about that massive number? I don't know whether anybody can grasp the idea of $90 trillion that's going to move. What does that mean? $90 trillion is going to move to the next generation.
Well, it means a lot. It means really good things for the IRS and the federal deficit, because
that's usually what it is,
most of
right?
that's going to be taxed.
Yeah.
And so it's going to mean a lot of taxes, but it also means that there's going to be 1 to 2 generations of individuals that are going to be inheriting wealth that they may or may not be prepared for. And so it's really important that we start preparing that transfer now, because at the end of the day, the money is right now, if it's your money, it's sitting in your accounts and you worked hard for it and you saved it. But it's how do we responsibly pass that on? How do we actually have a purpose behind your savings? Because even if you want to spend the money before you die, unfortunately, unless you know when that last day is, there's going to be money left over. There's going to be an inheritance that you leave. And so today I want to start the conversation about that. I think it's a really important conversation to start.
You have created a tax tool. Tell me about this tax tool that is retirementtaxtool.com. Because I think this is going to figure into somebody who's looking at this great wealth transfer and why this becomes such a significant question, because we've been doing what we were told to do, and that's put money away tax-free, tax-deferred. We thought it feels tax-free. I know you looked at me. It's not tax-free. It's tax-deferred because we would have loved to pay it on the seed. Now the harvest is coming.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, right, if you started saving when you are 20 years old or even 30 years old, and at the end of the day, maybe your last day comes at 90 years old, that's 60 years of growth that we're talking about. And if that's all tax deferred money in IRAs, or even if it's split up between a couple accounts, but for the majority of people, it's mostly in their IRA funds, all of a sudden, this is going to be a massive tax bill. So I created this tax tool. It's retirementtaxtool.com. And what it does is it shows you the estimated taxes based off of what you enter for your longevity, meaning how long you're going to live, for the potential taxes that when you leave them behind, what that rate's going to be, also the taxes that you're going to pay while you're alive, and the growth rate. So we look at growth rate, we look at the percentage of income taxes, and we look at for how long. And that number for a lot of people is shocking. That number for a lot of people, let's say you have $1 million in your IRA, you might look at that number and it might be bigger than $1 million. And that's because when we start talking about 30 years or 20 years of compounding growth and the taxes that we pay on that as we go, and then the taxes that are going to be owed on inheritance, holy cow, it can blow some people away. And so I created this tool because we almost need an awakening of these facts. We almost need an awakening of this information, because we can start planning for it now. We can make an impact on this and start making that number smaller, but we have to take some specific actions today to impact that number 10, 15, 20 years down the road.
Okay, so if this is the boomers' number for the most part, how do the boomers start to attack this now when we're probably in a window that's advantageous to boomers, unlike we've seen for quite some time.
Yeah, this is a fantastic time to start doing the tax planning. Number one, taxes are at historically low rates, even though it doesn't feel like they're low rates.
Yeah.
In fact, when we look back at historic tax rates, they are. On top of that, one of the fantastic things that I have seen is that as people are doing their taxes this year, they're starting to see more money coming back. And that's because we get the senior bonus deduction with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And with that senior bonus deduction, it affords us an opportunity to really start getting a higher standard deduction, which means that we can potentially convert more money at a lower tax rate. And so we have this window of time, which that senior bonus deduction actually expires after 2028. So we have this window of time that we can start making an impact on our taxes now for the future and start planning ahead for what we know is coming.
Okay, retirementtaxtool.com, scan the QR code to be able to find out where you are. Look, the understanding for a lot of people is I don't even know what I have. All I've been doing is what I've been told to do. So understanding what you've put away and the tax deferment with this and how much that's actually going to cost you now, later, and then to the next generation is going to give you an idea that you probably want a strategy to put in place. If for boomers now I have an advantageous time, does this mean anything for Gen Xers who are now going to reap the benefits of what's coming down in this $90 trillion? Is there something to start preparing for before we get to this spot for people who are approaching that retirement red zone?
Yeah, there's multiple things that can be done. I think communication is key. I think organization is also critical. However, one of the things that sometimes is undernoticed is the impact that when somebody inherits an IRA, okay, when they inherit the IRA, it's going to be taxed at their income rate, and they have to drain that IRA within 10 years. And for that reason, we need to start planning ahead for this, because let's say that that the person that is inheriting the funds, let's say they have a nice job. Let's say that your beneficiary on your IRA is going to your daughter. And let's say your daughter works in tech and makes $150,000 a year. And I actually know these numbers off the top of my head because I just calculated for them for somebody.
Yeah.
If your daughter's left $1 million IRA and she spreads that $1 million out, taking it out $100,000 a year over the 10 years, that's going to be added onto her $150,000 salary that she's making at work, which means that most of the taxes are going to actually be paid in the 32% tax bracket. Federally speaking, without state taxes included, federally speaking, on $1 million inheritance that's spread over 10 years, she'd be paying $272,000 in taxes. Think about that. On $1 million, she'd be paying $272,000 in taxes. That's a wild number. That means that you worked, out of 40 years, a third of it's going to the IRS. That means that 10 of your working years were just worked and saved to send that money to the IRS.
But that's what
wild.
people are doing.
Correct. Correct. And there's a better way. There's a better way. I discuss in my book, but just to see what your number is, head to that retirementtaxtool.com and take a look at your number and see what it is for you, because it might not be $272,000. It might be $100,000. Would you still be okay with $100,000 of your hard-earned money going to the IRS? If there was a different way to do it, if there was another way that we could go about attacking this, would you want to at least learn about it? And so if you look at the number and it shocks you or you have questions, give me a call. I'm happy to walk through the details of it. I'm happy to talk through exactly how to apply it to your situation and some potential options that might be available for you to change that number and lessen that number.
Because it is all about the number. And the number that you think you have, it is not all yours. Uncle Sam wants a piece of that. So call this number, 833-348-4813. Let's put together a plan for you. Shocking? Maybe. Is there a strategy that we can put together that works for you? Absolutely. 833-348-4813. Back after this.
For me, my ideal client looks like somebody that has worked hard their entire lives, has generally lived below their means, so they've been able to save some money, and now they just want to figure out how can they live off of what they've saved and live comfortably off what they saved. I also tend to sway towards somebody that is a conservative investor. What the math shows is that losses can hurt you more than gains help you. And so I like to work with conservative investors that don't want to have to worry about which way the market is turning today. They instead want to know which way is their grandkid turning today, right? Where is their next vacation going to take them to, or where is their next charitable event going to be? And so my ideal client just wants to focus on the important things in life, knowing that they have confidence in their financial plan.
So glad you're with us. Wealth by Design. Brad Johansson along with Tom Elder, president of Retirement Wealth Design. We're talking about the great wealth transfer of about $90 trillion moved from the boomers down to the Gen X. And a lot of that is going to be taxable. So how do we address that? A lot of this goes into legacy plan, Tom, trying to figure out, and for a lot of people, well, I don't have legacy. There's no legacy here. I don't have all. If you have something, there is a legacy plan, but it's not just for down the road. There's a legacy plan to be built while we're still here. I want to go through some of the questions because you do this so often. Give me an idea of the most common questions that people have if they're working on a legacy plan that includes moving money down to the next generation.
Yeah, I'd say, so the number one question that I most often get is going to be, how do I avoid probate? I don't want my assets, I don't want my savings, I don't want my house, I don't want things stuck in probate. In the state of Missouri, probate on average takes 11 to 15 months, and it costs approximately 5% of the estate, not including the taxation on it. And so I think the number one is going to be probate. And so when we start putting together financial plans, legacy and estate planning is a huge aspect. We spend a lot of time focused on this. And I also even offer continuing education on this through different workshops in the area because it's so important. And so I'd say the number one question that I get is probate, which we discuss different ways that we can avoid probate. And we can do that even if you have a will, if you have a trust. How does it all work? How does it all fit together, and how does it work for your benefit? I think that the second question, what's your favorite word that we've been talking about lately? It starts with a T.
I don't like taxes. I don't want to talk about taxes, but we always have to talk about taxes. We have to
because it's so, taxes are not only typically the biggest expense that retirees have in retirement, it's also what's going to take the biggest chunk out of that inheritance. And so we have to talk about taxes when we do legacy planning. And so one of the things that I like to do, and I find it interesting because over time, people's purpose and goals of their savings start to shift, meaning that when they first retire, oftentimes what I hear the purpose of their money is for themselves. They want to travel, they have some hobbies that they want to explore, they want to buy a few things. And then as retirement starts to mature for them, they start talking about how can I make sure that as much of what's going to be left is passed on. And so we need to start looking at taxes, and we need to start looking at what's going to be the tax impact of your savings and how it's passed on to the next generation. And so I'd say the second biggest question I get is taxes on the inheritance, and how does that work? What can I do now to help avoid that? And also, can I start giving now at a lower tax rate if possible?
Oh, I want to get to that. I want to make sure that you know why retirementtaxtool.com is on your screen right now. To scan the QR code to find out what you have qualified for. More taxes. Qualified money is the money that you put away, tax deferred, and Uncle Sam wants a piece of it now, later, and beyond when you are here. So if you have those two questions, is there a third that's logical that comes for most people?
So the third question that I often get is about the inheritors and stopping infighting after the money is inherited.
Good luck with that.
And so how can we try to start to form these plans to stop that? And it could be things from as easy as protecting it from a spouse. If your child were to get divorced, how do we keep the money in the family bloodline? Or it could be, I don't want my kids to have disagreements. I once had a lady, she came in and she said, Tom, I just went through this this estate planning process with my mom. She passed away, and so we started going through her estate. And I said, oh, okay, so did she have plans set up? She said, kind of. And I said, okay, so tell me about them. She said, well, on the back of all of the pictures in the house, there were Post-it notes. And on those Post-it notes were the names of, I guess, who she wanted to get it. And I said, well, how'd that go? She said, well, we ended up having a little bit of a laugh because some of our names were scratched out and a new name was written underneath of it, right? And that kind of thing, that just demonstrates that there was somebody at home that was worried about infighting, worried about who got what, and didn't know exactly how to pass her things on to the next generation. And it was most likely stressful, and it was most likely worrisome, and it was something that was on her mind. Do this before it's too late, meaning if by the time you get to the point that either you passed away or you're in the hospital, it's almost too late for that. If we can get it ahead of time, you can stop focusing on that, focusing on the inheritance, on who's getting what, making sure there's not going to be infighting, and you can actually focus on the rest of your life and spending time with your loved ones. And it comes down to having that plan and having a written plan for it to make sure that your wishes are carried out no matter when you're alive or after you pass.
Yeah, we've got the number on your screen that you can call for that. I also want to make sure that you have an understanding that he's put all of this together for you, kind of in a user's guide. This is retirement wealth by design. And it's going to be your design. But the components of figuring this out, all of them are necessary in what you're doing to try and figure out what your legacy is going to be. So I'll leave that QR code up for you for a moment. Scan the QR code so the book is yours. We'll send it out to you for free. All we're looking for is tools, trying to figure out how to make this work. Is it fair to say a lot of people who come in don't come in going, hey, I just want to meet with you because I want to talk about my legacy plan? It may be that tail that wags the dog down at the very end of this whole thing. We can get to that later. Have you seen now, with the number of times that you've done this, how significant, while you're here, that we create a legacy plan that is meaningful, that can be useful while you're here, before we start looking at this great wealth transfer?
Yeah, the biggest thing that people tend to think, a couple of myths that come into play, I think, are going to be, one, I don't have enough wealth for there to be, that's for rich people, right, to have some kind of estate plan. And that's just not true. Everybody needs an estate plan because estate planning is important for both when you're alive and after you pass. Estate planning is all-encompassing, so it's really important. It's also, I'd say the second myth is that, well, I don't necessarily need an estate plan because I don't really care what happens when I'm gone. And at the end of the day, I understand that, and I get where you're coming from. However, if we do things right, there's going to be wealth left over. There's going to be money left over. And if there is, do you really want the majority of that going to the IRS, like your hard-earned savings that you have worked so hard for and sacrificed and lived below your means to accumulate? Most people want that going where they intend it to and not just the IRS. And so there's a lot that we can do there. But I would say even when estate and legacy planning is important, number one, we start with an income plan. Because sometimes when we put together these income plans, you're shocked at how much money is going to be left to inherit. And so we need to open our eyes to where does this $90 trillion actually come from? Because where it comes from is having a good income plan and that you're not going to run out of money. And then number two, once we figure out the income plan and see how much is going to be left over, then we look at the taxes and we can see how much we're going to give versus how much we can keep. And so between those two aspects, then we start working on the legacy plan because that's when it really hits home on, I need to solve this. I need some type of plan in place before it happens to make sure that the money goes where I want it to.
Let's solve it with you. Let's put up the number on your screen, 833-348-4813, so that you can call and put together a complimentary written financial plan that includes everything from your income plan to dealing with your taxes to your asset preservation to your legacy plan. All of it has to be included to make it work. And you've probably said, yeah, I need to do this at some point. Let's do it now. 833-348-4813. We're back after this.
How I got in the financial space was really based off my grandfather. My grandfather grew up in poverty, Great Depression, like a lot of people. He taught me that a full life is not about what you have, what you drive, what's in your bank account. The purpose of life, how to have a full life, is serving other people. I grew up in a great household, had a great dad that taught me a lot of lessons about work ethic. One of the biggest lessons he taught me was if you're gonna do a job, do it right or don't do it at all. But my grandfather really instilled in me the servant's heart mentality. When I got old enough that I finally realized I could have an impact on the community around me, that I was given gifts that could be used to serve others, one of the people that I started with was my dad. My dad was a great father of four, worked his whole life, sacrificed for us. One of the areas that he told me that he had always struggled with and struggled to find good advice was finances. So when I realized that I had a gift for finances and that I could actually help those around me, I started with him. And he was one of my very first clients ever. And he still is today, and I'm proud to say he's successfully retired and helps take care of my kids now. But that's how we treat everyone that we work with. We try to serve those around us because at the end of the day, that's why we're here.
Glad you're with us on Wealth by Design. Brad Johansson, Tom Elder, president of Retirement Wealth Design, talking about the great transfer. It's a great wealth transfer, about $90 trillion if you can somehow figure out what that number looks like, moving from the boomer generation down to Gen X and beyond. Dangers. What are some of the dangers of this money moving? Because when we talk about great wealth and moving it over, seems like a benefit. What are the dangers moving this money now?
I think part of it is surprise, meaning if you haven't communicated with the next generation of who's going to be inheritance, they might not be prepared to handle whatever their inheritance is. And they might not understand some of the principles of wealth management, meaning risk management, right? Tax management. They might not be prepared for this, because when it comes time for this, if you're talking about a baby boomer leaving an inheritance to a Gen Xer, so somebody that was born between 1965 and 1980, well, those Gen Xers are in the kind of red zone for retirement themselves.
Yeah.
And so they need to start really working through the risk management and the tax management and the income planning themselves. And so making sure there's communication. And I think besides that, it's just helping them to understand how to make good decisions with wealth. One of the things that people often tell me is they feel more comfortable, especially people that have managed their own finances.
Yeah.
They end up hiring me because they want to make sure that if something happens to them, their spouse is going to be okay, and their children will have somebody to counsel them after they're gone on the wealth that they inherit. Because if you've been doing this yourself for all of these years and you haven't communicated what your strategies are, what your techniques, what your principles and values are when it comes to wealth management, having somebody in your corner that can communicate that after your passing or when you're no longer competent to do it yourself, right, can be a very, very beneficial thing just to help with easing that transition and peace of mind.
This becomes a family matter for a lot of people, but it is so significantly a tax issue, which is why we've had this up. I'm glad that you get a chance to get the book. I want you to scan that, but I also want you to have access to the tax tool. The retirementtaxtool.com that you can scan the QR code is to give you an idea of where you are now, where you could be, and the strategies to make it the very best that we have. At the end of the day, it's efficiency. Mm-hmm. Trying to figure out how we can be most efficient with the rules that we have to play with while we're playing with them right now. And God knows we're in legislative risk every day of our lives because the government can change the rules whenever they want to change the rules. We just saw that with the stretch IRA, that you have to do this all in 10 years. Who's to say that it's going to be different? So how do we now manage that within our family? Try and figure out how to do that best. I always say the runway time is the most significant, and you always
Plane won't take off if you don't have a long enough runway.
you keep coming back to me and say best time to start was yesterday.
Yes, sir.
Meaning that when this legacy thing comes to about, we wait to the end on something that we could do so much about if we just started a lot earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, so in the book, I cover multiple areas that we can start taking our plans from good to great. Some of those areas include things like income distribution planning. Which accounts are you taking money from? Depending upon what your purpose is how we should set up these income distribution plans, where the money is coming from and when. I talk about investing different accounts different ways, such as if leaving a legacy is important to you, well, let's try to make that legacy as tax-free and as big of tax-free buckets that we can leave. And so we might want to invest the Roth IRA with a little more of aggressive investments than we might in the IRA or the taxable account. And so I discuss that. I talk about qualified charitable distributions. I talk about multiple strategies that can be used if legacy and estate planning is important to you. It's one of those things that we can impact this now while you're alive.
Yes.
Because we don't know what the tax code is going to be in 20 years. We don't know what it's going to be in 10 years. And so let's work with what we have now, what we know it is to be, and let's start taking advantage of some of the tax code that we have now, just in case it does change down the road.
So you can use the tax tool to that point. Within it, all the strategies that are here within the book. So that retirement wealth by design, you scan that code as well. We'll send this out to you for free. Why don't we arm you with the best that we possibly can, with the most amount of tools that we can, so that your retirement is going to be successful in the way that you want it to be? 833-348-4813. Let's put together a comprehensive written financial plan that is yours and yours alone to take you through this retirement that on average is going to be 25 years plus, that you want to make sure that the money lasts and that it goes where you want it to go. And you and your family get to keep more of that money in your pocket. Let an expert help you. It's retirement wealth design. Let's do it for you and design it the way you want it to be designed. Thanks for joining us today. I can't wait to see you in the office. We'll be back here next time on Wealth by Design.